Ce grand réalisateur est le roi hollywoodien du film Catastrophe. Après avoir réuni Landgren et Van Damme dans le film de science-fiction Universal Soldier, il écrit et réalise Target, puis 10 000, ainsi que les films apocalyptiques Godzilla, Le jour d'après et 2012. Il se penche ensuite sur des drames historiques avec The Patriot, où il dirige Mel Gibson, et Anonymous, un thriller shakespearien. Mais il est surtout connu pour avoir mis en scène la défaite des extraterrestres dans Independance Day avec Will Smith.
Hi, I'm Roland Emmerich. You're watching Hollywood's best film directors. I normally live or regularly live in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and right now we're like in London, and I'm doing first promotion for Anonymous. My childhood was a happy one. I kind of grew up in a house with 4 kids. I was number 3. The youngest of the boys. I have a younger sister, and we had a very kind of harmonic childhood. We lived in a smaller town outside of Stuttgart. My father owned a company, so we were all groomed one day to take over the company. At least we boys. And that didn't work out. I was only first interested in art. I was always like I was constantly drawing. I was painting. I was interested in. I was also interested in movies, but not only in movies. So what, I was like really not really sure what I wanted to do. I was one of these kids who was constantly searching. But I knew for a fact that I didn't want to go into the company of my father. And so I was like searching around, and my parents, knew somebody like in a television station, so they kind of got me like an internship. And I went there, and I realized I never ever wanted to do TV. But there was a woman there, who said you should go to the Munich Film School. It's very hard to get into, but I think you would be perfect. And I said, but I want to do production design. Do they like kind of teach that? And he said, not really. Just say you want to direct, and then everything will be fine. And that's what I did. I kind of got accepted, and I remember the first day of, they asked everybody, so who wants to direct? And it's like 15 kids, and 14 raised their hand, and I didn't. And the professor asked, so you back there, what do you want to become? And then like kind of 14 heads turned because I said production designer. And they were like real directors. They said, oh, that's why I'm my production designer in my movie. So I did a lot of production design, but then you have to naturally do your own movies. And I ended up being, I don't know, I was the only one in the end of the studies who had done a feature film. When I was in film school, like Star Wars came out, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which were like kind of seminal movies for me, especially Close Encounters of the Seminal Kind, of the Third Kind, because they had like a hero who one day all of a sudden wakes up and something extraordinary has happened. And when you look at all my movies, they very much go into this direction, that like you just wake one day up, and either a monster's in town or like aliens are there, or and that was for me like kind of where I started really getting into science fiction. The Principle of Noah's Ark was a movie I wanted to do as a graduation film, and we were like 3 or 4 film students who wanted to throw their budget together. But as it goes in film schools, everybody said, then who is the director? And, we couldn't like agree on that. So I was like kind of clear. I was like, I said, I'm doing production design. But everybody else, they were like kind of fighting over who's director and who's doing this and who's doing that. So at one point, I all of a sudden stood there and it was only me. But I kind of kept going, and I wrote a script. And that script was for a feature-length film. When I handed it in to my professor in the film school, he like weighted every script. And they were too heavy. I said, no, we cannot do that, it's too heavy. So that one was very heavy. And but I talked him into handing it into one of the There's a one government funding system in Germany which only like kind of funds first and second time films. But I had never done one with the film school. So it was a big deal that I was allowed to hand in the scripts to this government fund, which I was only like allowed to kind of ask for 90,000 marks. But I secretly asked for 120,000 marks, and I got 170,000 marks. Because at that year they had not many movies they wanted to do, so more money, you know, for smaller amount of films. And then all of a sudden I was sitting there with 170,000 marks, and we needed more money. So then I was like sent to some producers, and I liked one of them a lot, and he liked me. It was like Bernd Eichinger. And Bernd Eichinger said, "This is so crazy what you want to do, let's do it right." And then all of a sudden I had 450,000 mark, and then I went 100% over. The movie ended up being 100,000 marks. I think it's somebody once like kind of gave it to the called Guinness Book of Record. I think it's in there as the most expensive student film ever made. I think the first time it hit me that I'm a real director was when I came to America, very, very late in my career, because I was like hired, you know, to do a movie in Los Angeles the first time, and it was a very big movie. I had just done 4 movies in Germany, and my last one cost like around 7 million mark, which was like roughly at that time like $3.5 million. And I was put on a Stallone movie as a director, and the idea for the movie was great, but the script just was not good enough. And I was like hired by this producer just as a glorified cameraman. And he kind of thought, you know, that he can direct it and Stallone can direct it and everybody can direct it, but I kind of insisted on that the script gets better and better and better, and it didn't. And I first time like kind of sat down and wrote with a friend of mine, which I had met as an actor, my own script. And at that point when I handed in my own script, this producer totally freaked out. He totally freaked out. And then I realized all of a sudden I have to leave that picture. I had to leave that film. And then I realized, oh, I'm a director. Because I cannot only do something which looks good, I want to say something. And that's what a director does.
Action!
I had like kind of said no to this other movie, so everybody like kind of said, you know, or the producer said to me, "You will never work in this town again." These famous words. Somebody told it to me, and I had, you know, like kind of pretty much given up in Hollywood because I said, but I had like kind of said yes to an executive producer credit for some other smaller picture, and we like kind of were shooting this in the desert. And all of a sudden I get a call from Mario again, and he says, "Look, I just fired the director of this movie, and do you want to do it?" And I said, "I don't know." And then he said, look, I sent you the script and then you can decide." And I read the script, and the script was terrible. It was just terrible. But then I said to myself, look, I should like at least give it a try, a chance. And it's also kind of a little bit bad to go back to Germany, you know, without having made a Hollywood movie, right? You don't want to say, "Oh, that's also not so good." So I kind of discussed it with a couple of friends, and then I went to Mario Casar in his office, and I remember like it's the day, and I said, "So who's in it?" And he said like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren. And I said, "Who's Jean-Claude Van Damme?" I didn't know the man's name. And he was like flabbergasted. I said, like, "Look, I'm here in Hollywood now for a year. I mean, sorry, I did worked. Karate film is not really my thing. So yeah, I think I heard it, but I was not really aware." So what I did, I watched all of Jean-Claude's films. And I was actually quite surprised how, in a way, charming and good he was, you know? And so I said to myself, okay, so I asked, so Mario, what do you want? And Mario said to me the following: has to be called Universal Soldier, has to have Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren cast as genetically engineered soldiers. It has to be at least 90 minutes long. We have exactly $19.6 million. Do whatever you want. And that's what I did. I got a lot of offers after Universal Soldier, but I said to them, again, you know, I said a lot of no to a lot of things. They had all numbers behind them, you know, they were like all the sequels. And I said, I don't want to kind of do a sequel, period. And I told everybody I have my own script. I worked again with the same writer, like Dean Devlin, on a script called Stargate, and nobody wanted to have it. Not one person, not one company in America wanted to have it. So I found somebody who just loved Universal Soldier, and he was French, and he had just started a production company for Canal Plus, Hexagon, a guy called Mark Friedman, still a good friend of mine, and he said, he read the script and said, fantastic, let's do it. And he pretty much he made like kind of Canal Plus put up all the money for this film without having domestic distribution. So we shot like the biggest independent movie ever, and it was in a way my first Roland Emmerich film.
He will come forward and we'll lift we will give him a stick like up like this. Right. And that will be the sign everybody comes forward.
I love casting. It's very, very torturous, but it's very important for a director to get the right cast. And I'm a little bit, you know, because I did a couple of mistakes in my life. I know how important it is. Matthew Broderick, I was a lifelong fan, just a lifelong fan. And then when we were like kind of talking about, you know, doing Godzilla, we said like, who could we cast? And we just had like said, why we don't cast, you know, our favorite actors. And at that time it was pretty much for me, Matthew Broderick, and for Dean Devlin, Jean Reno. He loves Jean Reno. And I loved him too. And so there was like we built the cast of that. I had just had a meeting with Warner Brothers about a prison escape movie. And I asked them so what they were thinking about the budget. And they said it was between $70 and $80 million. And I said, oh my God, a prison escape movie for that much money, you know, for that, you know. And I was really venting to my assistant in the car. And I said, for that kind of money, I make a alien invasion movie, you know. And the moment I said it, I said, wait a moment. Nobody has done an alien invasion movie lately. And then we went to our agent and told them that we like kind of want to do that movie. And then he said like, oh, they're doing this already at Warner's. They're doing Mars Attacks with Tim Burton. Now I'm a huge Tim Burton fan. So I said, oh, no. And then I said, when is this movie coming out? And they said like in August. Said next year in August, this movie's coming out. So I said, Dean, let's write Independence Day right away. Let's write it fast and get it set up. That's what we did. We wrote it in 3 weeks. We set it up the next week, and we made it come out 1.5 months before Mars Attacks.
It's not unusual to be loved by anyone. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone.
I'm always trying to put some sort of little devious things into my movies because I can. Nobody like stops me, so as long as they don't stop me, I will do that. And I always like kind of felt, you know, there was this I wrote it with Harold Closer together, and he said, we have to destroy the White House because people expect it from you. And I said, like, yeah, but it's such a cliche. And then it says, come up with something else. Then I was like thinking really hard. And at that time, I was starting reading a lot about the Kennedys. So I said, And then because I was a kid, and I was in America, I was like in Virginia Beach, and I was visiting, you know, all these big aircraft carriers, which they, you know, keep like in Norfolk, you know. And so I said, what would happen? They would like lift up all these ships, you know, and they would crash naturally in buildings and things. And isn't it like cool when, of all aircraft carrier, the JFK, you know, crashes into, it's like kind of John F. Kennedy returns to the White House. And I thought it was funny. I was kind of, you know, and that's why I did it.
Action! Action!
I love enthusiasm and fantasy and, you know, inspiration. And I love like kind of people who come on the set and just like kind of, you know, you feel how passionate they are about what they're doing. In everything, I mean, actors, crew members, everybody who's like really passionate about their work and can express it is like a good thing for a movie. A Universal Soldier, I had so much fun doing it. I was so like, because I was before, you know, not in charge really, and I was like kind of the first time given the chance to do my own movie, and I took it, you know, to the fullest, and Jean-Claude and Dolph, they were like sweethearts. They like loved me, you know, because I was so direct and outspoken. I didn't like kind of lie to them. I was just honest, you know, and they had a blast, and it was a big success. The Patriot was like a little bit a different kind of thing. It was the studio from the very beginning insisted, because it was a big historical drama, there has to be a movie star. And I had read about Mel Gibson that he has 6 children, with the 7th just announced, you know, and our character had 7 children. So I said, perfect match, you know, and I met him, and he really loved the script, and he at that time, you know, asked me very specific how I wanted to do certain scenes, because he had done already Braveheart, directed it and won an Oscar for it, so he was very specific about certain things how I wanted to do it, and so I explained it to him, and he said yes, and we had like a really great time. Well, Heath Ledger was a little bit contested at the beginning, because I had tested him against another guy together with Mel, and everybody was actually more in favor of the other guy. Also a very, very good actor. He was actually a better actor than Heath was at that time. But Heath had something very noble. There was something amazingly noble about him. And I had like kind of 2 people who supported me, my sister and Mark Gordon. And everybody else, you know, even including Dean Devlin, they wanted to have the other actor. And I had to call Mel Gibson, because he was also supporting the other actor. And I said, Mel, I think the other one is better. I would like to cast Heath. And then he says, you're a director, you know, and your word is here law. And that was it. And then after 3 days of shooting, you know, he came to me and said, you were right, I was wrong. This kid is amazing. I had tried to make this movie also with Sony, you know, 5 years earlier, and we went to England. But it turned out to be too expensive. We didn't get the cast we wanted. And we like kind of stopped it again. And then during 2012, I had the first time like kind of shot a movie all on stages, which I always wanted to do. But there's a lot of exterior scenes too, and I kind of said, wow, that's the way to how to shoot Anonymous. And I realized, that with that I can slash the production costs, by half, also by going to Germany. And because I speak German, I don't have to bring any Americans with me. I kind of pretty much shot it with all Germans. And also Germany was close enough to London, so flying costs were not a big issue. So. And there was a science fiction about the space shuttle program and weather control, and it was very political at that time, and it was quite successful in Germany. It was shown in competition in the Berlin Film Festival. So all of a sudden, I was 24 and standing in front of 2,000-3,000 people in the Zoopalast. I get my cameraman, my composer, and my editor, and we're all from the film school. So we were all between 23 and 24. And the first question, what they asked, in the press conference, how old are you? And I gave the answer, old enough. And I had the whole room laughing, and from that moment they kind of liked us. My sister is just the only person who tells me the truth. She doesn't care about anything. She just sees me as her brother, and she loves me very much. And when there is something which I just do wrong, I hear it from her. And it's sometimes, I'm sometimes upset about it, but I'm terribly thankful of it. And she's always the first one who gets the script. She is brutal. But it's good to have somebody like that. I have the good fortune that I have a couple of friends which are like Ute, that just don't care, They just say what they think.
Action!
Well, the day after tomorrow was an interesting story because I'm very interested in environment, and I always said to my friends, one day I want to do something about global warming. It has to be, but it has to be a movie, I think, which doesn't go the route of a documentary. It has to be one of my movies, a bigger-than-life spectacle, but I don't know yet how to do it. And then during the shooting of The Patriot, I found a book called The Coming of the Global Superstorm. And it had this totally crazy idea of that everything happens in one storm, which was crazy, but the underlying science was totally accurate. And I knew this is because of that, a film. There were also certain scenes. It was a non-fiction book, but there were little fictional stories in there to kind of, illustrate, how people will deal with the fact. And there were two scenes in there. One was the scene that kids survive with their school teacher because they burn books in the New York Library, and the other one was because of the storm. Americans go over the Mexican border, and Mexico shuts the border because of all the illegal immigrants from America. And I thought it was such two good moments that I said, this is a movie.
Wow. Oh. Yeah, that's okay. I think it's really cool.
My favorite directors are, in no particular order, Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton, Martin Scorsese, Coppola, David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Godfather, Blade Runner. My advice to directors is always do exactly what you want to do and don't waver in any way. Even if sometimes, when I was working in Germany, everybody in a weird way hated me that I did American movies. But when you look at it in the bigger picture, I kind of actually trained for my bigger pictures, you know. I trained for, you know, something which I wanted to do with my life, you know, and I never had to change what I was doing. You know what I mean? A lot of like European directors like kind of lost their way in Hollywood, you know, because they all of a sudden thought they have to do Hollywood pictures, you know, which is like, I think not what you should do. I think you should do your pictures you like and stay true to yourself. And I just always stay true to myself.